All right, to the scintillating sounds of Rusty the Rooster crowing in the background and traffic running out on Blanchard Road, we are going to be talking today about removing fenders from 1960 probably all the way up to 64 Galaxies, because there is a lot to do here. A lot more than there would be with a 1967, 68 Mustang, let's say, or anything else. But today we're going to show you how to take a fender off of a 1963 Galaxie in preparation for either a new old fender from our parts car or possibly a brand new fender from the guys at AMD.
For 45 years, the Miller family and the dedicated staff at Autocrafters have been here helping you to restore your dream Ford. Thank you for your support. Here's to another 45 years of delivering parts for your Falcon, Fairlane, F100, Galaxie, Maverick, and Pinto.
All right, so we're going to be doing this today, and I'm going to tell you one thing about the Galaxies. These things are they're built like tanks. There is in excess of 13 bolts that hold this fender onto this Galaxie. One of them being this bolt right here that's holding the hood hinge assembly onto the fender. Luckily, it's also bolted onto the firewall, so I don't actually have to take the hood off in order to remove the fender, at least in theory. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this one out first. I want to see how this affects the hood hinges and all that. I know it's going to make them a little bit wobbly, but we're still stabilized on the driver's side. If I were taking the entire front end apart, I would just go ahead and remove the hood and be done with it. But I'm going to pull this one out. It's a 1/2 inch fastener. The co-host, she's up on the other side of the car. Now, I will also say something about Fords from the 60s. All the way through 1964, Ford used a fine thread fastener on everything that they built. After 1964, through in probably the early part of 65 or late 65 maybe, they went to a coarse fastener, and that's pretty much, they used that all the way up into the 70s. So you're going to have to watch out when you're doing this. Make sure you hold on to all your fasteners. Maybe go out and buy yourself some Evaporust. Throw them all in the Evaporust so they clean up nice, and then you can reuse them. So be a little careful when you're taking these things out. You don't have to be super careful, but you get the idea. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and pull out most of the rest of these fasteners. This is hanging in the wind. It's putting a little bit of pressure on the firewall, but I think we're going to be okay for that for right now. And I'll probably even eventually put a block of wood underneath here to remove some of that pressure and place it on the top of the inner fender here. I'm going to start taking out the rest of these. First thing I'm going to do though, take off this little brace set of bolts. The problem with this is that you can't just undo these three and you're done. No, you have to undo these two, this one, and this one here, which means you probably will also need to remove this bolt here in order for this to come out, so that you can start removing everything else. You can see where this is going. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start taking this off. I'm using an impact on this. A good idea would be to go on the back side of some of these bolts, probably especially these that are facing to the inner fender, and put some PB Blast on it. I can't find my PB Blast. Some of these are conveniently held on with speed nuts, and some of them are held on with actual nuts on the back side. I'll have to get inside and look at this one to see if it's held on with a nut. What'll happen a lot of times with these speed nuts, and it's really a pain, is they are a J-clip also, and when you try to take them off, they'll snap the J-clip because they're rusty. And so the bolt spins, and then you really have a hard time getting those off. So what's going to now have to happen probably is this whole piece will have to come off. All right, so I've got some needful things in the box here, and I've got my mobile phone with me for a reason. I'm going to set that aside for a second. I've got a 3/8 driver so that I can use this in case I need to get into areas that I can't get into with my impact. I also have a 1/2 inch combination wrench with a mild offset to it. I find that these work much better whenever you're going in and taking fasteners off that have nuts on the back side of them. It is going to beat your hand up pretty good. If you're an older guy like me, you're going to have a lot of fun using those arthritic creams when you're done at the end of the day. And I've also got a 1/4 drive impact on here with a 5/16. Most of these Galaxies use 5/16 fasteners to hold all the grill application on. There are some 7/16 fasteners on here, but not a ton. So you will want to grab you a 7/16 to take some of the grill stuff off as well. First thing I'm going to do though, since I've taken that bolt out, I am going to grab my camera and I'm going to take that along with one of the other fasteners I've pulled off and take a photograph of it, because there is a difference between the two. This one is for the hood hinge mounting, and this is just a standard fender fastener. Both of them are also, like I said before, fine thread fasteners. All right, so now I'm going to turn my phone off, hope nobody calls me while we're talking to you guys, and I'm going to go ahead and start moving through the rest of these upper fender bolts to see if I can get them off, and then we're going to have to try to figure out what our worry point is on this guy right here. All right, so I'm going to take these two out. These are actually pretty clean compared to a lot of them that I've pulled out of these old cars. Okay, these are out. Now I'm gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do about this cat right here. I am probably gonna go grab some PB Blast, duck up underneath the fender and work on this, but I wanna go ahead and get these two finished up right here with my combination wrench and my impact. Trying to do this with a standard wrench setup is gonna be almost no fun whatsoever. See, some of these fasteners can be a problem because you run into rust, especially on the passenger side of the car. There we go. That one's not too bad. And what I always do with these fasteners when I've got something that is a combination is I'm going to put them together like this, and then I'm going to take a photograph of what I've got, mostly because I'm an older dude now and I don't remember things quite like I used to. I'll take a photograph of it, where the position is, and then throw them in the box. There's wiring up underneath here as well. There's a ground wire and your headlight wiring harness that's underneath this thing. Sometimes what I'll try to do is capture that wrench underneath here on the core support. And sometimes that just doesn't want to work. Basically what I'm doing is I'm avoiding this one. It's just not going to be any fun. All right, I'm going to roll up underneath the fender now and check and see if this is a J-clip or is it a nut. I'm hoping it's a J-clip. Actually, I'm hoping it's a nut, because if it's a nut, it's going to be easier to get out of there. All right, so I have my PB Blast, or my blaster lubricant, that I'm going to shower down inside there to hopefully lubricate that fastener a little bit. I don't really care if this stuff gets wet, to be honest with you, from that. And what I'm going to try to do is shove a screwdriver in here and see if I can pressurize that nut to peel it off of there. If not, we're going to be in a kind of a hard spot here. It's going to want to spin on you. What's happened is the rust has eaten out this corner up here, and there's actually an attached nut on the fender, and the nut's just spinning in the hole. So I think now, and of course, in an act of fate, the sheet metal skin is still on the fender, but the nut is spinning inside the sheet metal skin. The joys of classic car ownership. Tried pushing it back the other way to see if I could get it to move to get on that lubricant, but and it's just boogering up the bracket. So what I'm going to try to do now is take this piece loose here, and I can't get to that with my impact, so I'm going to have to grab my 1/2-inch wrench. I'm not worried about this particular fender so much as I am being able to get it off so that we can put the fender from the 4-door on here. The nice thing is the guys at AMD also have a fender for these cars. So we may get the AMD fenders in. If you guys want to see how they fit, let us know in the comments below, and we'll take a look at that here in a couple months maybe. Now, you can see what this is. This is a captive nut that is actually spot welded to the inner fender. And quite frankly, I mean, I don't even know if that would have come off well if we had been able to work with it, because you can see how rusty this section was. It was already pulling up a little bit, so we were kind of in a spot where we were probably going to have to do something like this anyway. Luckily, we're not reusing this fender. I was going to reuse this, but now I'll have to probably clean up my mess there, so to speak. All right, that's undone. Now, here's something interesting that Ford did. This is a tab. It's just a flap tab, and what Ford did is they pulled this flap tab up under here, I'm guessing, after they put the fender on the car. So if you're taking it off, without removing the radiator core support, you need to take that tab and bend it down to get the fender out of here. And like on this car, that fender tab is just really happy being there. All right, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to take the headlight door off. Throwing all my fasteners in the bucket. And there are 4 Phillips head screws holding the headlight door on. These we're going to need to recondition somehow. I don't know how. And your headlight door comes off. And I'm going to set that over here to the side. Also, you have to remove this screw, which means that you'll probably end up also having to remove this trim piece, which is held on by a screw out here and a 5/8" fastener right here. Luckily, these are pretty short, so it's easy to get to them, but you will have to do it with a combination wrench if the headlight buckets are in here. So I'm going to try to get the headlight buckets out first. I was able to do that on the 4-door, but that's because the grill was completely removed. I don't want to take any more of this stuff off than I absolutely have to. There's one screw here. And you have 2 more Phillips head screws over here. That looks like that's it. This thing is almost older than Stonehenge, possibly in tool years. And it's an old Black & Decker, what is it, Versa pack. And I tell you what, I enjoy using this thing. This was my dad's. And if it's doing that, it's too much for it. Just grab a normal Phillips head to pop it loose. Sometimes these aren't going to want to come out. So you always got one, don't you? Not want to come loose. All right, now there's 2 ways that you can attack this. You can actually go in and use a vice grip or a locking plier, if you want to call it a locking plier, on the head of the screw, which I want to try that first. If that fails, then I will drag out my trusty grinder and grind the head off to get rid of it, because like I said, this fender is not going to be staying in play. Let me go grab my locking pliers. One tiny little turn at a time. Hopefully that's not just spinning in the mount. These are self-tapper type screws, but there may be a nut in back behind it. Nope. It is effectively stripped. The head out. There we go. Fasteners like this I do not keep. I go ahead and throw them away, and I will try to source some new ones from somewhere. See, this is actually a machine screw and not a self-tapper. So there is a nut in the fender back here that holds this in place. I'm going to put this one in here just for reference, so I know what I got there. Pull my headlight buckets out. All right, now it's kind of hard to see possibly, but there's a bolt right here. That is part of the fender. This is your splash shield right here. So I'm going to take and see if I can get these to uncork from here. All right, so these are held on with a bolt and nut assembly. There's one here and then one right here. These are both part of the fender, not part of the splash shield, which is this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rattle them, because the inner fenders on this car are pretty nasty. And then I'm going to have to put on some safety glasses, which I probably should be wearing already anyway, but I'm sorry, I just don't sometimes. Now what that's doing is knocking the dirt off that nut assembly so I can actually see it from the back side, because right now there is absolutely no way for me to see it. There's just that much schmutz underneath the fender. That was really being a pain for position. All right, so I have to dive underneath the fender now and see where they're at, but you can see the dirt that was falling out of here, so you know that we've got a nut back there somewhere that we're going to have to deal with. I'm going to put my safety glasses on, roll underneath, and PB blast those. All right, I got my torch. I have to use a torch in order to get the body shuts and road tar off the back of that nut, or I can't get combination on it in order to take it off. What this does is it softens up the body tar, the tar, and the body shuts. It's also a good way to remove the tar from the inside of these fenders and burn yourself as well. But you can see it's just really easy to take off after you burn it. I'm going to do it on the other one as well. Set the driveway on fire. I should be able to now get a combination on that, but I'm going to wait a couple of minutes because I don't want to burn myself taking that thing out of there.
A few minutes later.
I am going to try to go ahead and get on the one that is on the right hand side. I think the problem I'm having is there we go. That's that one. Let's see if I can get to the other one. Underneath here. All right, both of them are out. Now I get to move on to more other things that need to be taken off. I'll gather those up in a little bit. All right, now I'm going to take this lower grill trim off here. I'm going to start off with my regular Phillips. This is not a long screw. This thing is incredibly short. Put that in there. And then there is a 5/16 bolt right here. And these are a specialty fastener, and they're incredibly short as well. Pull that there. And that just pulls off. Now, oh, the big fun. All right, there's fasteners we have to go back up underneath the fender for, but you have to take this one off in order to get to those. Well, not in order to get to them, but it's got to come off before those can come off. There's two fasteners up in here. There's also a brace across the bottom section of it that holds the lower fender to keep it from flapping. So that's something that's got to come off of here next, or as well. And I guess we just might as well stop talking about it and start doing it. This is why I wear safety glasses. Cam would be like safety squinting it, and it's just not going to work underneath here. But those two are the hardest ones, and you've got one more bracket bolt on the outside that holds your brace in. What I'm showing you right now is just a B-roll shot we took of it, because it's just hard to get the cameras up underneath here to show that portion of it, but it's just a bracket, and you just want to unbolt it from the fender and make sure that the bracket is not on the top side of the fender, so you're going to probably have to pop it up and out of the way a little bit. But there's just, I mean, any of these old cars you're dealing with, tons of schmutz underneath here. All right, on this, you're going to want to remove your kick panel. This kick panel is already off, but there's a number of screws you'll have to take out. In order to access this nut right here, there's a captive bolt on the fender with a nut on it, and that has to come off in order to be able to remove the fender. So I'm going to take that one off. You might want to grab a deep well, but I think a shallow will probably do the job. And they put a hole right here for you to be able to get through it. There we go. All right, now this is actually your bolt that you would see on a seat as well on an early Ford. It uses this tall captive nut. So that's something that's used in another place, oddly enough. So that one's out. Now I got to move to the two top bolts and do the ones underneath as well. Onward and forward. All right, we have one bolt right here on the top that holds the fender on place. Hopefully this thing will kind of pull out this way and I won't have to remove this little sucker, but I think honestly we might have to remove this in order to get the fender off because of how it sits. I will try it without doing that, but I have a bad feeling about this one. I'm going to go ahead and remove the bolt in either case. This is another one that has a washer system. You'll notice how big the hole on the fender is. This is one of your major adjustment points, and it has a dual washer. It has the washered bolt along with a regular washer that'll give it the room to tighten down where it needs to. You'll notice how the serrations have bit into the washer. That's pretty typical on this stuff as well. I'll get a picture of this as it is. Bolts go in the bin. Okay, the only thing we have left is one up here on top for that. I'm going to leave that one into the very last. I'm going to move down to the bottom of the fender now to get the rest of these undone. On there because it's maybe I get it off. I'm going to loosen up this cowl. There are a series of small screws in there, and across the top front of this, I'm going to go ahead and just take all these out, not all of them, but a lot of them out. I'm hoping that will loosen this thing up enough for me to be able to get the fender out of here when I undo this one bolt. Now note that this wouldn't be an issue if you were working with a hood off the car. You wouldn't be having the problems we're dealing with here. I'm trying to make sure I can get the it's like it's loose enough for one thing, but not loose enough for a finger to take it off. I'm a little worried because theoretically this is the last bolt and washer, and I'm not feeling a lot of movement out of the fender, and so that tells me that we may not have gotten everything done yet. Now ideally, I was hoping that I could get this off without removing the bumper. It looks like I can get it off without taking that out, but I would probably have to close my door to a degree to be able to get to it. I'm going to try this with the door shut to see if it'll come off. What I'm hoping to do is to pull it out this way, come back off of the bumper on the front, and then hopefully maybe open the door up because we have that piece in here that we're going to have to deal with. All I want to do right now is to just pull it out a little bit. Yep, it's not going to let me do that with the door closed, so let me open the door up. I don't know if that's even going to work. I may have to have the door completely open for this. Yeah, I'm going to have the door completely open. Oh no, I bent the trim. I'm sure someone's going to grieve me about that, but not going to work. Man, it's just right at it. All right, there it is, it's off. Now, if I were trying to retain this fender, I would not have been so brutal with it, but with the dents and stuff we have on it, my recommendation would be to probably just go ahead and take the door off. It would make this a lot easier. You can do this if you just loosen up the cowl on the car to get the fender to remove, so there you go. All right, that's a little video for this week. So do me a favor, be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on down the road. Fender ho!